She combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people.
King Charles had entered the private court chamber, expecting a procedural hearing. Instead, he watched the monarchy's most protected family secret become evidence. Before him lay confirmation that Queen Camilla had secretly removed Elizabeth's private diary from the royal archive, concealed it for months, and denied knowing where it was. The king did not shout. He simply gripped the edge of the table, stared at the sealed evidence box, and appeared to break beneath the betrayal. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had believed the hearing would concern missing catalog records. The royal archive, the protected collection of letters, journals, and papers belonging to the sovereign, underwent an inventory, and several entries no longer matched. William and Princess Anne had been summoned because the missing material could affect ownership, inheritance, and royal security. None expected it to reach the king's marriage. The judge opened an evidence summary and named Camilla. She had personally removed Elizabeth's diary from a restricted archive room, hidden it inside a locked compartment at Clarence House, and instructed a senior aide not to record the transfer. Clarence House, the London residence associated with the royal couple, had become the place where the late monarch's private thoughts were concealed from her son. Charles lowered himself into his chair as his strength left him. He asked the judge to repeat the finding. The request stunned William, because the prince knew his father had heard every word. He needed time to accept that the woman beside him had deceived him over something sacred to his mother. Camilla tried to speak. Charles raised one hand without turning toward her, and she stopped immediately. The gesture carried no rage, yet it hurt more than anger. She saw that his instinct to protect her had collapsed beneath grief, and for the first time, the monarch looked at his wife as part of the threat. The court then revealed that the diary's protective seal had been broken after Elizabeth's death. Forensic specialists found signs that several pages had been photographed, while one handwritten sheet had been removed. That missing entry named Camilla, William, and a private warning intended for Charles alone after his mother's death. Anne stepped into the corridor when the hearing paused. She told William the diary had not vanished by accident. Someone had feared what Elizabeth left behind. Charles had discovered that his mother's final private voice had been hidden from him, but the deeper wound was still waiting, because everyone in that chamber had something to lose when the missing page was read. The diary belonged to Elizabeth, but the battle surrounding it now belonged to the living. Charles faced the collapse of trust inside his marriage. Camilla faced the possibility that one hidden decision could destroy everything she had fought decades to secure. William feared that the missing page contained a warning about the crown he would inherit, and Anne, standing rigid outside the chamber, felt that her mother's memory had been violated by someone the king had trusted completely. Charles had always treated the diary as his mother's final private refuge. It was never meant for public eyes, never meant to become evidence, and never meant to divide the family she had spent a lifetime holding together. The king had delayed reading it because he feared reopening the pain of Elizabeth's death. He believed the private record would remain protected until he found the strength to face her final words. Camilla understood what was now at stake. The queen consort had spent years building a place beside Charles, surviving criticism, rejection, and public doubt. Her position depended on more than a title. It depended on the monarch's complete trust. Now one secret act threatened to turn her from his closest companion into the woman who had interfered with the late queen's final wishes. William stood at the end of the corridor, with his hands locked behind his back. Catherine approached him quietly, but the prince barely moved. He admitted that part of him wanted to confront Camilla immediately, yet the future king knew his first duty was to protect Charles, because anger released too soon could deepen the wound before the truth was fully known. Anne entered a small waiting room, and shut the door with enough force to silence everyone outside. She told Charles that the diary had belonged to their mother, and that hesitation would make the betrayal worse. The princess was not speaking as a senior royal. She was speaking as a daughter, who believed Elizabeth's memory had been handled without respect. A recovered message then changed the mood again. Camilla had asked whether the diary contained final opinions about the succession household. The succession household meant the people, roles, and private arrangements surrounding the future monarch. Her question proved she had not searched blindly. She expected Elizabeth to have written something that could threaten her place. William suddenly remembered a private conversation after the funeral. Elizabeth's former secretary had advised Charles to read the diary before approving permanent household changes. The king dismissed the warning because he believed the archive was safe. Anne then recalled the night Camilla first learned the diary existed, a memorial gathering at Windsor, where a locked red case briefly entered the room. One careless sentence had given her knowledge. What followed was driven by fear. Months before the court revelation, the royal family gathered at Windsor for a private memorial marking the anniversary of Elizabeth's death. It was meant to be an evening of remembrance. Instead, one sentence changed everything. In a quiet reception room, the late Queen's former secretary mentioned that Elizabeth had left a private diary, containing final reflections on Charles's reign and the future royal household. Camilla heard the words. Her expression shifted, and from that moment, the diary was no longer safe. Charles had entered the gathering carrying grief he rarely showed. Camilla remained close beside him, while Anne and William joined several trusted courtiers after the remembrance service ended. A closed family ceremony meant attendance was limited to relatives and selected palace staff, allowing private matters to be discussed without public record. That evening, the subject turned to which of Elizabeth's belongings should remain sealed, and which should eventually pass to the king. Elizabeth had begun the diary during the final years of her reign. She filled it with personal observations, private disappointments, concerns about the succession, and advice she refused to place in government papers. The succession was the formal order deciding who would inherit the crown, but her concerns reached beyond names and titles. They touched the people who would influence Charles and William when pressure became unbearable. The former secretary then spoke directly to Charles. He explained, through a documented account later given to investigators, that one entry contained Elizabeth's final assessment of those closest to the throne. The king was urged to read it before restructuring the royal household. Camilla heard every word. She became still, and Anne noticed the change immediately. Camilla waited until the aides had left before questioning Charles. She asked whether his mother had ever truly accepted her. The king refused to speculate, and said the diary would remain sealed until he felt ready. When the queen consort asked whether they could read it together, he answered firmly. Elizabeth had written it for him alone. Charles believed the matter was settled. Camilla heard something else. Exclusion. She nodded, but fear had already taken hold. 3 nights later, she contacted a household official and requested several items belonging to the late monarch. The diary was never named, yet the request identified the exact archive shelf holding the red leather volume. A senior assistant initially refused. Camilla invoked Charles's authority and claimed the items needed moving before renovation work. The aide obeyed, but secretly recorded the instruction in a private notebook. That account later became crucial evidence in court. Investigators would eventually discover that concealment was only the first betrayal. After reading Elizabeth's final assessment, Camilla tore out one page and sent its contents beyond the immediate family. The Windsor conversation explained her fear, but it could never excuse what followed, and when Charles finally faced her alone, grief would become something far more dangerous. When the court adjourned, Charles did not return to his private office. He asked Camilla to follow him into a smaller chamber and ordered every aide to remain outside. For several seconds, husband and wife stood in silence. Then the king placed the photograph of the open diary between them and asked one question. "Why did you take my mother's words?" Camilla reached for the table, but he moved the evidence away before she could touch it. Charles had chosen privacy because he wanted an answer from his wife, not a defense shaped by lawyers. The closed door changed the crisis completely. What had begun as a court inquiry now became a reckoning between two people whose marriage had survived years of public judgment. A constitutional duty meant an official responsibility tied to the crown, and Camilla believed Elizabeth's diary could strip those duties away. Camilla said she had been afraid. She believed the late monarch had written instructions that would remove her from future royal work and weaken her position beside Charles. The queen consort insisted that she only wanted time to understand the entry before he read it, while still crushed by grief. She told him she feared one sentence from Elizabeth could undo everything they had built together. Charles did not raise his voice. That made his anger worse. The king told her fear did not give her ownership over his mother's memory. His hands trembled as he asked how many mornings she had sat beside him, spoken to him, and watched him mourn, while knowing the diary was hidden only rooms away. Camilla finally admitted the deeper wound. She could not bear the thought that Elizabeth had condemned her forever. She had spent years serving the monarchy, while believing the late sovereign still saw her as a danger to Charles and the crown. The confession was raw, but it did not soften him. Camilla moved toward the empty chair beside him. Charles pushed it back beneath the table before she could sit. The gesture was small, but its meaning was brutal. He did not want comfort from the person who had caused the pain. Camilla then revealed, through her recorded statement to the court, that she had photographed the missing page and sent it to her sister, Annabel Elliot, for safekeeping. She feared palace officials would use it to force her from public life. Charles answered with the truth she had dreaded. Elizabeth had not demanded her removal. The recovered entry warned that secrecy and insecurity could become dangerous if Camilla ever placed self-preservation above duty. The king left without offering forgiveness. William and Anne waited outside, knowing he now faced one final choice: protect his marriage or protect the authority of the crown. By nightfall, the crisis had moved beyond a broken marriage. Royal lawyers, security officers, and senior household officials gathered around a long table as Charles faced the most painful question of his reign. Could the crown continue to entrust sensitive material to Camilla? The king listened without interruption. Then he removed his glasses, set them beside the recovered diary, and told the room that his private feelings would no longer guide the decision. Charles now held legal control over the sovereign's private papers, the protected collection of personal records belonging to the monarch. That authority allowed him to decide who could enter the archive and handle Elizabeth's writings. Yet the court's findings had exposed a deeper failure. His own household had allowed the diary to disappear, which meant trust alone could no longer protect the crown. William accepted responsibility for future security reforms. The prince would oversee new rules controlling access, movement, and digital copies of private royal material. Anne received temporary charge of Elizabeth's remaining personal archive. The princess understood what the appointment meant. Charles was shifting authority away from Camilla's circle and placing it in the hands of the two people he still trusted without hesitation. Charles sat alone at the head of the table and admitted the truth. Part of him wanted to believe his wife had acted only from panic. The king wanted fear to explain everything, because that would make the betrayal easier to survive. But the monarchy could not endure if personal insecurity became an excuse for hiding royal property and deceiving the sovereign. Anne stayed after the officials left. She watched her brother press both hands against his face, exhausted by the choice before him. The princess told Charles that protecting the crown did not mean he had stopped loving Camilla. It meant love could no longer erase consequence. Charles signed an emergency household order. The document, a temporary command governing palace access and duties, removed the Queen Consort from private archives, sealed correspondence, succession briefings, and Elizabeth's personal collections until the legal process ended. Camilla would remain beside him in title, but not inside the rooms where the monarchy kept its deepest secrets. Security logs then revealed another disturbing detail. Camilla's private secretary had entered the archive corridor on the night the diary disappeared. The official claimed to know only that a family item was being moved, yet investigators doubted the explanation. Digital records deepened the danger. The missing page had been saved on 2 devices. One copy went to Annabel Elliot. The second destination remained unknown. As news of the suspension spread, several aides began clearing their desks. One senior courtier refused to surrender a locked phone. Charles had reclaimed control on paper, but the decision immediately tore through the household, exposing loyalties hidden while Camilla still seemed untouchable. The first consequence arrived before sunrise. Camilla's morning briefing was cancelled. Her security access card stopped opening the private archive corridor. 2 engagements vanished from the royal calendar, and staff members who once entered her rooms freely now waited outside for permission. Sitting alone at Clarence's house, she watched an aide remove a sealed dispatch box from her desk. Only then did the Queen Consort understand that Charles's order was not symbolic. Her influence was being dismantled in real time. Camilla saw her scheduled meetings disappear one by one. Discussions involving royal patronage finances and confidential correspondence were reassigned without debate. A royal patronage was official support, given by a member of the family to a charity or public cause, and losing control of those duties meant losing visible proof of her place beside the king. Staff were also told that no historical item could enter or leave her residence without written approval from William's security team. The inquiry widened quickly. Investigators questioned aides about the archive removal, the broken seal, and the copied pages. What had begun with one hidden diary now pointed toward coordinated help and possible destruction of evidence. Every new question pushed Camilla further from the protected life she had spent years building. Camilla asked to speak with Charles. His secretary answered in careful language, explaining that the king would communicate only through legal counsel until the next hearing. Legal counsel meant the lawyers officially handling the dispute. She lowered the telephone slowly. The refusal hurt, but the cold formality hurt more. Charles faced his own isolation at Buckingham Palace. He stopped outside the private lift that normally carried him toward Camilla's rooms and remained there for several seconds. Then the monarch turned away. He spent the night in his study beside unopened boxes that had belonged to Elizabeth, unable to return home and unable to escape his mother's absence. William confronted the senior courtier who had refused to surrender a locked phone. The prince placed the device on the table and warned that loyalty to one royal could never come before duty to the monarchy. The official finally gave him the access code. The messages exposed the second recipient. A photograph of Elizabeth's missing page had been sent to a private legal advisor connected to Camilla's future financial arrangements. The advisor had been asked whether the entry could damage her position after Charles's death. Draft statements revealed something darker. Camilla's team had prepared to challenge the diary's authenticity if it surfaced, even considering a denial of Elizabeth's handwriting. She had expected discovery and planned resistance. Anne then received a private request. Camilla wanted one final conversation with her, not Charles. William warned against it, but the princess agreed to meet without lawyers, aides, or security inside the room. The Queen Consort had lost access, authority, and trust. Now Anne would discover whether she still intended to fight, or was finally ready to surrender the truth. Princess Anne entered the small sitting room, expecting another denial. Instead, Camilla was waiting without advisors, jewelry, or prepared statements. Between them rested a plain envelope. The Queen Consort did not ask for forgiveness. She pushed the envelope across the table and said it contained Elizabeth's missing page, the original sheet she had claimed was lost. Anne did not touch it immediately. She stared at Camilla and asked why the truth had appeared only after the monarchy was already wounded. Anne had chosen a room far from the main palace offices because she wanted no lawyers, secretaries, or family members shaping the conversation. The silence removed every layer of rank. A private sitting room was simply a small space used for personal meetings, and inside it, there was no crown to hide behind. There was only a daughter defending her mother and a woman facing what fear had cost her. Camilla admitted that the page had remained inside a jewelry case at Ray Mill House, her private home outside the palace. She had removed the sheet from the diary, but she could not destroy Elizabeth's handwriting. The Queen Consort said keeping it felt like control at first. Later, it became a reminder of the betrayal she could no longer escape. Anne refused to offer easy sympathy. The princess told her that preserving the page did not excuse stealing it. Her voice broke when she said Elizabeth had trusted the family to protect her private thoughts after death. Camilla had treated that trust as an obstacle because the truth frightened her. Camilla stopped defending herself. She admitted that she feared Charles would read his mother's warning and see every old controversy return at once. The secrecy began as an attempt to protect her marriage. Instead, the Queen Consort had created the very betrayal capable of destroying it. Anne finally opened the envelope. She broke the seal and read the missing page in silence. Her anger slowly gave way to sorrow. Elizabeth had written that Camilla could strengthen Charles if she resisted insecurity, but could weaken him if she tried to control what he was allowed to know. The full entry carried compassion as well as warning. Elizabeth recognized Camilla's endurance and accepted her place beside Charles. The late queen had not condemned her. She had feared that rejection would push her toward secrecy. Camilla then signed a voluntary statement admitting the removal, concealment, photographs, and false archive instruction. She also agreed to withdraw temporarily from official duties. Anne carried the recovered page directly to Charles. She told the king that Camilla had stopped fighting the truth, but only he could decide whether accountability had left any path toward forgiveness. By morning, the secret could no longer be contained. Across Britain, broadcasts interrupted regular programming with the same extraordinary headline. The Queen Consort had admitted hiding Elizabeth's private diary and would step back from official duties. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered beneath a cold gray sky. Some defended Camilla. Others carried photographs of the late queen. Inside the palace, Charles stood behind a closed curtain, hearing the voices of strangers debate the most painful betrayal of his life. Buckingham Palace released a formal statement confirming that Elizabeth's diary had been recovered, along with the page removed from it. A formal palace statement was the monarchy's official public account, carefully written to establish facts without exposing private family arguments. Camilla accepted responsibility and withdrew from royal engagements while the court completed its final legal review. The announcement protected the diary, but it could not protect her reputation. Britain divided almost immediately. Broadcasters called the scandal both a grave breach of royal trust and a human tragedy driven by insecurity. Commentators argued over whether Camilla had confessed from genuine remorse or because the evidence had become impossible to deny. Her years of public service were weighed against one act of deception, and every opinion seemed to deepen Charles's pain. A London newspaper captured the crisis with one brutal front page. Beneath an image of an empty royal chair appeared the words, "The Queen's words were hidden." A man outside Buckingham Palace raised the page above the crowd, and within hours it became the symbol repeated across every broadcast. The mood changed again at noon. A woman approached the palace railings and placed a handwritten card beside them. It read, "Elizabeth trusted duty more than fear." Others added flowers in silence, turning public anger into an impromptu tribute to the late monarch. Charles watched part of the coverage alone. When a presenter repeated Elizabeth's warning about secrecy, the king switched off the television and placed the remote beside the restored diary. He said nothing. Silence had become the only response he trusted. William refused to let the family answer cruelty with cruelty. The prince told Catherine that accountability had to remain firm, but Camilla must not be publicly humiliated. The future crown could not claim moral authority while punishing a woman beyond the consequences she had already accepted. Investigators then confirmed through their final documented report that both digital copies had been recovered. Elizabeth's words had never been published, sold, or shared beyond Camilla's sister and legal advisor. Charles summoned Camilla, William, and Anne to Windsor. The legal questions were almost over. The emotional judgment was not. Britain had spoken outside the gates. But the scandal's final meaning would be decided in one last room, before Elizabeth's restored diary. At Windsor, the recovered diary rested in front of the four people most changed by its disappearance. Charles sat opposite Camilla, with Anne and William on either side. No lawyers attended. No officials prepared statements. The king opened to the restored page and read his mother's words aloud. When he finished, nobody spoke. Elizabeth had not ordered punishment. She had asked them to choose duty over fear. Charles closed the diary and finally delivered the decision that would end the crisis. Camilla's confession, the return of the missing page, and her full cooperation prevented a long public trial. The court recorded a serious breach of royal property and confidentiality, meaning protected family material had been removed and shared without authority. Yet the internal consequences still belonged to Charles. The monarch now had to decide how the crown would respond to the woman he loved. Charles spoke first as king. Camilla would remain his wife and keep her title, but she would permanently lose independent access to private royal archives, succession papers, and sealed family correspondence. Her official duties would return slowly and under stricter oversight. The decision protected the monarchy without pretending the betrayal had never happened. Charles then spoke as a husband. He told Camilla that he still loved her, but love could not rebuild trust in a single moment. The king would not erase her actions simply because punishing them caused him pain. Forgiveness, if it came, would require time, honesty, and conduct stronger than words. Camilla did not argue. She removed the archive key from her personal ring and placed it beside the diary. The queen consort said she understood that trust could no longer be requested. It had to be earned. Anne carefully returned Elizabeth's missing sheet to its original place. The princess became permanent guardian of her mother's personal collection, while William accepted responsibility for modernizing royal security. The prince closed the protective cover, and Charles sealed the diary inside a new case. The archive was repaired. The family was not. Camilla's greatest mistake had not been fearing Elizabeth's judgment. It had been allowing that fear to justify deception. Charles's defining choice was not between his mother and his wife. He chose truth over the temptation to protect someone he loved from accountability. Charles left the room, carrying the sealed diary himself. Camilla remained behind, then followed at a distance, not expelled, not forgiven, but finally free of the secret that had controlled her. Elizabeth's voice was protected. The deception was over. The crown remained wounded, but it stood stronger, because truth had finally been faced. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.